We are here for a Role Models Matter training. You're gonna see some training that's been developed and an online website that's been created for role model training. Techbridge, part of our model for our after-school girls clubs, we meet once a week. Like I said, we work with 4th through 12th graders, so we do once a week girls-only engineering club, and it's led by a Techbridge staff member partnered with a classroom teacher. And then a key part of that is that we invite STEM role models multiple times a semester, and we take at least 2 field trips to workplace visits per semester. So role model training has just grown organically out of what we do. So then what I really hope is that you might take pieces of what you like tonight and that you would consider hosting a role model training, especially if you were having an event or a reason to bring more than one role model in for a certain thing. So one of the very first things that we do in a role model training, we recommend going over some statistics or some we call them startling statistics. I'm not a particularly numbers-based person. I tend to be motivated by hearing the personal stories. I like my heartstrings tugged. But some people, especially it's important to know in our training, are going to be motivated to volunteer because they hear about the difference that they can make and hear some numbers behind that. Generation STEM was published in 2012 and was a really interesting nationwide study of girls. Some girls who self-selected whether they would consider themselves a STEM-interested girl or a non-STEM interested girl. And whether girls considered STEM one of their interests or not, they found across the board that girls' interest is there in STEM. It just needs to be primed. That our work as educators, as caring adults in girls' lives, is to include STEM among their many interests. And that the challenge for us is how to take girls' interest in STEM and put it into action and show them career options that are available for them. They found even among non-STEM girls that they were more interested in STEM if we can show how STEM careers solve problems in the world and make the world a better place. And there's research that further supports that girls in particular are motivated by knowing how a STEM career will help others more so than the prestige or the salary. So it's just something interesting to think about and something that we really have to include in our role model work. As you probably know, the number of engineering degrees awarded to women is so underrepresented. It's somewhere between 12 and 18%, typically depending on the field of engineering you're talking about. And of course, very few women make up STEM occupations, with the exception of health careers and veterinary medicine. Medicine and veterinary medicine, women actually dominate. But when we're talking about engineering and specifically, it's less than 20%. And I think this is a really interesting piece of research that says 21% of girls said they were encouraged to be an actress by their parents, but only 10% were encouraged to be an engineer by their parents. Again, a little bit more research, just the importance of exposing girls to female role models helped counteract their negative stereotypes. Amazing that less than 50% of girls say they even know someone in a STEM career, which how do they not think their science and math teacher is someone in a STEM career? How do they not think their doctor is someone in a STEM career? We got to work on that. So why train role models? Has anyone invited a role model or a guest speaker to your classroom and it didn't go quite as well as you hoped? Tell me about it. Go for it.
Well, in one instance, I think it was that the person had a little bit of difficulty translating his research at the postdoctoral level to something that students could really grasp onto. And we had kind of practiced that, but it still, I think he got carried away with his research part, and it just didn't connect for them. But I've had other instances where the hands-on portion, that really engaging part, where especially in after school is so important, just didn't work as well. So.
Okay. So sometimes talking maybe beyond kids' reference, beyond kids' heads. Other times the hands-on activity just didn't, for whatever reason, probably a couple different reasons, didn't jive. Who else can talk about your role model experience? That maybe you're also thinking one that went really well and you can pinpoint what worked really well.
I've had instances where just the vernacular is so, my mom used to call $3 words, and I'm standing in the back going, fifth graders are not understanding you, And then on the other hand, I've had people in our classrooms or in our after-school programs who really almost become childlike themselves, so they leave that professional laboratory or professional manager, engineering, and then just come down to a childlike state where they tinker with the children instead of building massive skyscrapers. And those that can make that bridge seem to be the most successful, that I've encountered.
Fantastic, I would agree. Anybody else have something they want to consider about a role model experience that didn't go as expected, or?
Well, a great one. We just had some role models from
Okay.
the CSI unit come and visit over at Bailey in the unit of study with the 7th and 8th grade Encore children in forensic science, and they were wonderful. They were so relatable. But our children got a chance to see them in a positive way, and they were sharing some experiences and having some hands-on. And I forgot that I was the adult. I was, a 7th, 8th grader again too. But the hands-on experiences that they gave them with the fingerprinting, it was phenomenal. But they were so relatable, So it's like they took off one cap, as you were saying, Katie, and put on a different one with their CSI gear on, It was really cool.
Fantastic. Rachel?
I was just going to say that I think what I've seen whenever we have, role models or even guests come into a classroom or an after-school space, they are wonderfully talented people in many ways, or have really wonderful tools or technology that they're bringing into the space, but they're not necessarily pedagogically trained as a teacher, so you don't know how to ask open-ended questions to the kids, help them explore, guide them through, I see you have the engineering design, guide them through a process rather than just giving them information. So wonderfully talented people who maybe need some training on how to be a role model for
Absolutely.
younger children.
Absolutely. So I think you all have hit on the good and the bad, and the reason to ask our role models. And in fact, we should feel that we have a responsibility to offer support and training to our role models because it is such an important role, right? We do not want to have a role model and the experience be what I call the look of death, right? Where our kids say, not only am I not interested in this person, but I don't want to have anything to do with anything that they're talking about. So we decided at Techbridge that we require, even if it's an hour, what we typically do is an hour brown bag luncheon at the company the week before we're going to have a field trip event, besides the planning calls that we've had with the team that's inviting us. Or we offer these in-person trainings to the role models who are going to come into our classroom. And then last resort, like I said, we've created this website with modules that we'll take a look at, where if nothing else, we're going to say, please spend 15 minutes in your pajamas at home doing some role model training. So real quickly, I think one of the first challenges we face is where to even find role models. Does anyone know about FabFems? Do you know about this website? It's a project from the National Girls Collaborative Project where women STEM professionals have signed up. It's fabfems.org. They've signed up and made their own profile. And the nice thing is they've all done NGCP has done background screening on them, and the women have chosen their level of interest in being contacted. So some people will simply make a profile. Some people will say, I'd be willing to email. Some people will say, I'm willing to Skype. Some people will say, I'm willing to come to your camp or your school. And you can sort by state and by zip code, by field. You can sort whether they were a Girl Scout, a lot of different kinds of criteria. So I highly recommend FabFems. And if you know some female STEM professionals, please ask them to check out the website and sign themselves up. Another is, of course, canvassing your own resources. So do you ask your own students, not only who are their parents, but who are their aunts and uncles, who are their godparents, who else do they know in their church network who might be a STEM professional? Do you know about the connectory.org? It's also an NGCP, National Girls Collaborative Project, where you can type in your zip code to find STEM professionals and volunteers, but also other STEM events. So once you've found a source, like even if it's cold calling or cold emailing or tapping into an affinity group at a company, I think the key, and I bet I'm preaching to the choir here, is really defining your ask and really specifying the logistics, emphasizing the need that they're going to serve. So it's all about sharing maybe some of those statistics about the incredible need that exists out there and how they as a role model can have a huge potential impact. Obviously thinking through all the logistical specifications that you need. Are there any security requirements, background checks that they need to go through, information about how to enter the building, all that kind of good stuff. Don't hesitate to talk about how they as role models will benefit. The warm, fuzzy feelings. We hear from our role models that they go home and they are more excited to go to work the next day because they've been reinvigorated in their interest in what they do. And of course, we're here because we want to offer training and support. We want them not to feel like they're just going to show up and be on stage. We've got resources to make it more comfortable and inviting for them. You'll see that I'm kind of following this recipe tonight. We've talked about making the case, some statistics. We're going to talk about what they're going to learn at a role model training, explaining our expectations of what's going to happen. We're going to offer a little professional development for them so that they feel like they're even better equipped to talk with your students. We're going to give them something to practice and try and redesign and use that engineering design process thinking that they're used to. And then we're going to celebrate and support them. So I always like to start a role model training by identifying the stereotype because I'm asking them as role models to think of all the ways they defy the stereotype, that they shatter it. So what's the stereotype?
Typically, it is an older white male with glasses, crazy hair, and blowing something up in a laboratory.
So this comes from, of course, decades-long national research about the Draw a Scientist test. And this was a typical response, the Albert Einstein-looking guy. And can someone read what Amy, the 7th grader, wrote about who is a scientist? Do I have a volunteer?
I think of a scientist as very dedicated to his work. He is kind of crazy, talking always quickly. He constantly is getting new ideas. He is always asking questions and can be annoying. He listens to others' ideas and questions them.
But Amy was with the group who had an opportunity to go to a national lab where she met a lot of different kinds of role models, and here's what she drew and wrote afterward. May I have someone read Amy's post-field trip response?
I know scientists are just normal people with a not-so-normal job. Scientists lead a normal life outside of being a scientist. They are interested in dancing, pottery, jogging, and even racquetball. Being a scientist is just another job which can be much more exciting.
Thank you so much. I love that. To me, that sounds like the ultimate compliment. Being a scientist is another job which can be much more exciting. I'd like to do that. So what are some of the key differences that you see in the before and after? Go for it.
I thought a big difference was the he to they change, because the first one she just kept saying he, and here they're like they, much more broader, more inclusive.
And we can infer that happened because she saw a variety of people at her experience. Great. So she doesn't have a single, but a kind of a group image. What else do we notice?
The image is very different. The first one, the male looked obviously a little zany, and this woman looks pretty cool.
Yeah. I love that she's got open body posture.
Yeah.
I mean, personifying, welcoming, yes, some kind of glasses. I've heard that the detail, there's even a brand name Jean written on her, because that might be important in middle school, I don't know.
Well, it's so important because sometimes, especially adolescent females, do look to the style of clothing, or I noticed the sunglasses, and they might look at someone who is an incredible person with their background, but the student may say, wow, that person doesn't look like me, so I don't think I could connect with them or relate with them. And like you said, that open body posture, the cool kind of sunglasses, fashion, I'm looking at the pants at the bottom there, and that seems to me more relatable than the previous picture. It seemed kind of standoffish.
Would we all agree? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Okay. So I like to use this picture in my role model training because it helps me remind myself to say, please come most comfortably, casually dressed. You don't have to come in your business attire. Please be sure to talk in your personal introduction about yourself as a person outside of your work. Yes, I'm asking you here as a STEM professional. You're obviously going to talk about what you do, but don't forget these other details about you that make you uniquely you and you really interesting, because you might have a connection with one of the students in my group. And then the open body posture, I just always say, if you're wondering whether to go serious or zany, push yourself to your crazy, spontaneous, wild side, because that high energy is infectious. Great. So I think just kind of looking at the stereotype helps set the tone for your role model training because, like I said, we want them to take the stereotype and think about all the ways they pick that apart, they disprove it. They can talk about how they are not that piece of the stereotype, or maybe they are, and there's a grain of truth in it. So in our role model training, we say these are the things we want them to walk away with. What information they should be prepared to share about themselves, strategies that they're going to use to engage youth, and what they'll specifically be doing at your event or at your classroom visit. And this is my single best role model tip, especially when I'm working with university students. I just emphasize that if anything else, I want them to be fully present. It's a time to put their cell phone away, leave their drama of whatever's happening outside of this. They're here to volunteer, so let's fully engage. So as we are inviting STEM professionals, we want to show that we're super prepared with a plan. This is the recipe that's worked for Techbridge. You need to modify it for the way it fits in your classroom. You may not have an hour with your role model. You may have 5 hours with your role model. So this is what we recommend as the ingredients. Doing some kind of icebreaker, doing a short role model introduction. The focus of your time should be on the hands-on activity. And then, of course, you've got to leave time for the reflection and connections. If we pick the right icebreaker and think about the right questions to ask or involve, we can check for this background knowledge and even introduce some new concepts or new vocabulary or kind of see, does it jive with some people in the room? Do other people look like they're not quite getting what we're saying? And we think an icebreaker is key, and we tell the role model, so I'm going to facilitate it. You as the role model play along. For that comfort, starts already shattering the stereotype that this is a stuffy adult who doesn't ever let their hair down. And if the role model is cued in that we're going to play an icebreaker that relates to the topic of the day, they can start listening for, oh, I can call on her because she said something interesting in the icebreaker, or I need to check with him because he said something that maybe a science misconception that I want to bring into our discussion and bring back together. So icebreakers are so strategically key, not just fun and games. Second piece was that personal introduction. Like I said, you've invited a STEM professional, you obviously want them to come and talk about their career. But we want it to be personal and fun. They need to share some other information about themselves besides what it is they do every day. They need to use kid-friendly language, as we talked about good and bad role model experiences. They've got to be cued into what your student's age level is, what they're studying, what kind of vocabulary they're already familiar with, and what's going to be a new concept for them. They're there to share their academic path, but we always emphasize in our role model training that they need to share strategies about how they overcame challenges. We frequently have role models who say, you know, I was the only woman in my engineering class. And that could be off-putting. So one of our favorite role models says, you know, I was the only woman in my upper level engineering class, so I made sure to have a lot of extracurricular activities outside of my classroom so that I felt like I had a network of friends. And that helps. And then, of course, as we talked about the research, our role model needs to talk about how their career really helps others, because we know that's going to be particularly empowering for our girls. And they don't have to feel that they have to hit all of this in 5 minutes. There are going to be opportunities throughout their experience to share a little bit more about themselves. So here's a typical introduction that we might offer to another adult at a cocktail party. And if we're not practiced, we might offer it to the kids that we're meeting. Can I have a volunteer read this?
As a chemical engineer, I work to develop adiabatic processes for boilers in our NGPO business unit. I work in Sunnyvale and have been at my company for 5 years. It's a lot of work, but I've had some great opportunities there.
Sounds like some of the pat kind of stuff we would offer to another adult. I don't have a clue what it means. What are some of the problems with this introduction? Vocabulary, absolutely. So in our role model training, we're going to want to make time and space for us to practice our role model introductions, because every time we do our elevator pitch, we will be better at it, and we can customize it to our audience. So after one pass at a role model introduction, here was their next attempt. Can I have someone volunteer to read that?
I'm a chemical engineer, which means that I work with really small molecules, which are the things that make up everything that exists on Earth. Some products I've worked on include the gas that goes in your car and the cleaning solutions the custodian at your school uses to keep it safe and healthy for you. Outside of work, I like to hike with my Labradoodle Corky, play Scrabble, and spend time with my nieces and nephews.
Fantastic. So what do we see as some of the differences in version 1 and version 2?
Breaking down larger, like harder to understand topics like what she does and made it understandable.
Okay, what specifically is making you think that?
With the chemical engineer, which means that I work with really small molecules, which are the things. So not only did she break down what a chemical engineer is, but what molecules is.
Yeah. We ask our role models to think about introducing no more than like 3 to maybe 5 new vocabulary words with the group that they're going to introduce. Certainly at that elementary, middle school, no more than 3. So if they need to know chemical engineer, so they can go home and be like, who'd you meet today? A chemical engineer. What does that mean? So chemical, that's going to be one of our key vocabulary words.
Well, the first thing I thought is I want to hang out with the person in the longer version than the other person. But you know how they teach us, like the art of conversation is never to ask like yes/no questions and to keep it like open-ended. So the longer version, there's a lot more that I could hook on. And like you said, oh, I've got a dog too, or, I have cousins, or I like Scrabble. So it seems to me like there's more of a relationship build than in the first one. Because with the first one, I'd be like, oh, great, okay, see you later. No clue. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're hooks there for further
Right.
conversation.
And you can really have a dialogue, especially with students. There's nothing there off-putting for me, even, as an adult, let alone a younger child, so yeah, I would like to meet that person on the right. They sound fun.
Great.
I
One last, yeah.
also think that she did a good job of putting it in context where the kids could understand. Like the gas that goes in your car, they can think of that, or the cleaning solution that your custodian uses, they can think of that.
Yeah.
Instead of just like small molecules, like, okay. But like the cleaning solution, okay, I can think of 409, I can think of Simple Green, I can think, So I think that really helps.
Even if she's the kind of chemical engineer that doesn't work on gasoline or chemical or cleaning products at all, finding the reference point to something that kids have experienced. Because from there, you can further elaborate if the time and space permits. And just a little piece more on that, you see how she talks about the cleaning solutions used at school to keep it safe and healthy. So again, remember, how does it help other people? Right? Super. So now you're going to work on your personal introductions. You're going to do kind of a hybrid assignment here, where you get to be the STEM professional that I've given you a sticker for, plus you yourself as a real person. So you're going to think about things that you want to share about yourself, how you would explain the STEM profession that you are acting as tonight. And if you have fun stuff on your phone, in your purse, objects that help explain what a cool person you are, feel free to access that and get it ready to share with your partner. Person A is going to talk for 2 minutes. I'll set the timer. Person B is listening. I'll set the timer again. Person B will give a minute of feedback. 1 minute. Then I'll say, okay, now it's person B's turn to give their personal introduction for 2 minutes. And then we'll do the feedback.
Basically, I work in a field that tries to consider and help things move. So for example, like this is awesome Scotch tape. You've seen it a million times, but you might not have ever thought about how this little gear works so that there's constantly tape until the very last one. So my role is to think about how to make this work for millions and millions of people. Or in the case of a car, I'm thinking about how to get families from one place to another in the safest way possible, the most affordable way possible. So that's what I do, but that's just what I do for work. What I do at home is watch TV. I listen to my favorite radio station. I like to go to the mall. I like to shop. So that's just a little bit about me. Do you have any questions?
Can anyone share a suggestion that you gave your partner?
He gave a personal anecdote about how he got involved in civil engineering, about how he took his family out on boats and how he enjoyed looking at the bridges and how they were built. And I was like, are you a civil engineer?
Nice job, nice job. Okay, so definitely the personal connection.
So I loved what Diane was saying about, so she was a chemical engineer that worked on batteries, and she looped in her personal experiences that are very real, I think, about traveling across to the country to 27 states and 13 national parks. Oh, I got it right. And how, you know, batteries were really important to the people who worked in the national parks because they sometimes helped save lives if the battery in your phone, you know, stayed up, and I imagine, you know, had a light on it that could save you if you were like out in the wilderness. So she made a really convincing case from her real personal experience to her fake chemical engineer job, but I loved that the personal piece tied back into the professional piece, because when I did it, I was like, look at my cute puppy. and I wasn't as thoughtful as Diane was about making it.
I had 2 extra minutes to plan.
Yes, right. I was going to say, yeah, self-forgiveness. And that's why, I mean, this is an evolving process, right? We can keep getting better and better at it. But thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have interesting feedback to share?
She was good because she was brought in this little container and made it meaningful, you know.
Are you a packaging engineer? No, mechanical.
Mechanical engineer.
I tried to kind of make this into like a gear.
That was fast. I never would have.
There you go. Great. I mean, we are creative problem solvers, thinking on our feet and using what materials we have at hand. We are here to turn kids on to these careers, right? So it's the time to be overly enthusiastic, not dwell on the negative, not be like, oh, today was a hard day at work. Whew. No, we got to turn ourselves on and rev it up and sell it. Great. Well, I think it's helpful to look at a real STEM professional in front of a group of girls doing their personal introduction, because the more we see it, the more we do it, the better at it we'll become. So I told you that one of the resources from this project is our free website, which is techbridgegirls.org/role models matter. On it, there's a toolkit with modules of training. There are a bunch of different topics, and the one we're working in right now is the Sharing About You module, of course, because that's personal introductions. And I want to show you what typically is there is a little bit of background. Sometimes we have links to some extra articles if people want more. And then we have 1 or 2 video clips of our Techbridge role models in front of our girls after school. They're typically 2 to 3 minutes a piece, very short, and then a question or 2 that people can reply to. So if they want to create their own account and put in their response, they can have their responses emailed to themselves. So they would have a record of that. If you wanted to, if you were working with a group and you could require training, you could ask them to then forward their email responses on to you or something like that. But we're going to look at 2 pieces of Josetta Jones. She is a real Techbridge role model. And let's see how it goes.
And I'm not all science and engineering. I mean, I like to do things like you girls probably like to do. I heard someone earlier talking about shopping. I like to shop. I like Joe's jeans too. I don't know who said that, but I like Joe's jeans. I like to hang out with my friends. I'm sure you guys like to hang out with your friends. I like to read and travel. And that's exactly how I am with my friends. I'm going to have dinner with a friend tonight after I leave here. I like to travel, and I like to read, and I like to knit. So maybe there's like some things in that list of what I like to do that you ladies like to do as well. Anyone else have an idea about how science and the law actually come together? Oh, back there, yes.
I would think on patents.
If I had a gold star, I would give you like 10 gold stars today, because I am a patent attorney, and you're absolutely right. Science and engineering come together with respect to patent law. So who knows what patent law is? Actually, you probably know what it is.
Patents are like the right to go ahead and only you can make it in a certain way, like a phone. Say like you're only able to, only that company can make rounded corners on the phone.
Are you a patent attorney?
No.
I was like, somebody you know a patent attorney.
No.
Oh, I was like, you are extremely dead on, spot on with it. Patent attorneys help you protect your inventions. So I work for Chevron, and Chevron, believe it or not, we have lots of inventions, and they deal with actually exploring for oil and gas. Yeah, the gas for gasoline. We have additives that we put in our gasoline to make your car go better. We have additives that we put in our engine oils to make your car and other things like the shipping vessels on the open seas to actually move better in the ocean. We have some patents that relate to new technology ventures and new sorts of energy, like I guess wind and solar and mining for natural gas. So all of these things relate to patent law.
So that's a real life example of a role model. It was not rehearsed. What are some things that you heard from Josetta that you liked, or some things that you might coach for improvement, where she could take a different approach?
Just to define what additive means, so that, because it was clear about, what the additive was caused, like it made things move better or that kind of thing, but just to define that or use it, or not even use the word possibly, or define it later after you explain it initially.
Okay, so additive may or may not have been one of those key vocabulary words that she had thought of in advance to define, but that she might need to phrase that. She gave a few examples. If I were the teacher, I'd be in there writing it down on our board as a vocabulary word for the day. What else?
Something I really liked was just her manner and her energy. And I thought that she engaged really well, clearly with what students had already said, and incorporated that into her, into the way that she talked about her work and her interests, which is really important. So she's listening to the kids, she's being present. She's being very open.
Yeah, it helped that she had been in the classroom before the girls came in, so she heard them coming in, what they were talking about after school. She participated in the Icebreaker, so she was able to...
Noticing.
Well, I think we were all surprised that one student had like the perfect definition of what a patent attorney does. So we have to practice with our role models that you never know what's going to come out of kids' mouths. And how did Josetta react to that person who had a really strong definition?
She encouraged her and praised her for knowing it, and still gave a better definition of it, but still incorporated what she said. So again, like active listening. Yeah.
She connected her to the possibility of having that as a career. Like, are you a...
Love it. That's great. I hadn't thought of that. But she said, are you a patent attorney? I mean, that makes you feel like, hey, you're not an 8th grader. You're a grown-up that I'm talking with here. Are you a patent attorney? And career role play is one of our key strategies. We always do an activity and say, oh, you're acting as a patent attorney today, doing blah, blah. But also at that moment, while I thought it was interesting and exciting, that's also where I would coach for improvement. But Josetta said, are you a patent attorney? If I had 1 gold star, no, 10 gold stars for you. You've got the definition. And if I were somebody else in the classroom, how would I feel? Like I don't have anything else to add to that. That was it. I better keep my mouth shut because I don't have anything else to say that could top that or contribute to that. So we want to practice with our role models about building on the definition. And even, I think sometimes people are like, oh, but somebody might offer the wrong definition. That's okay. You can run with it and say, that's interesting. We'll come back to that. Or I want to check in with you later and see if you still think the same thing or something different. So I would have loved for her to say, great. That's definitely what I'm thinking. Does somebody else have other things to add on to it? Who can add something else to that? Or who can give me an example of what this person's talking about? She mentioned phones. What other kinds of products do you think patent attorneys might work on to really try to scaffold that definition? So we just do it by being really cognizant of what we're saying and practicing. All right, I think we spent enough time on the role model introduction, but you can see how important that could be in your training with a role model because they've got a lot of opportunities to do things that will be very significant to the youth that they're talking with. So we talk about whatever kind of STEM professional you are, we can always connect it to the engineering design process. So even if I have you coming into my classroom and we're doing something that's not at all related to what it is that you do at work, can we relate your experience to the kids' experience of working through the engineering design process? In engineering design, we are always looking to improve. There is no one right answer, unlike a math problem. We are always reinventing, looking for opportunities to make it better, and solving problems to improve the human condition. And that we are all actually engineers of our own lives, because we are all problem solving our lives. So that's the life skill we want kids to walk away with, regardless of what the hands-on activity is. Tonight, our hands-on activity is going to be Puffmobiles. Has anybody checked out that activity? If you Google Puffmobiles, one of the key sources is PBS Kids Zoom. Do you know that program? Zoom is an awesome TV program, along with Sci Girls, all kinds of great PBS programming. So if you went to the Zoom site and looked at Puffmobile, all you would get is the materials needed and these 3 instructions. We've added all the rest here. But that could be typical of a cool science activity. You might see something on Pinterest that you want to do, or just hear some instructions from somebody who's like, oh, my kids did that. That was really awesome. But you haven't spent the time developing your hands-on activity. And so we want to do that in our role model training. If we have something in mind already for that STEM professional to do, or if they come with an activity, we want to sit down and look at some ways that we can flesh it out further. So that's what we've done on this worksheet. We've put a little bit of science behind it. You can see these questions. So now you and your partner are going to build a Puffmobile with the materials in front of you, because another key part of the role model training is practicing the hands-on activity. You don't want to come in and do something with kids that you haven't tried yourself. So while you and your partner are building one, I also want you to kind of walk through some of these questions and kind of talk about how you would elaborate on your lesson plan.
Let's figure out before we start.
So I'm looking at the whole goal is you're going to make this car, and the only thing you can do is blow on it to make it move.
To make it move.
So,
okay.
looking ahead, how are we going to structure it so that the blowing actually makes an impact on it?
Exactly. You are exactly right. And I'm trying to think. And we can blow on it, right? Blow on them. So I'm wondering, can we use a straw as something to blow on to make it move?
Well, I'm thinking so. And then we're going to have a surface space or a piece of paper or paper, this is our paper, attached to it so that it operates like a sail.
Okay.
How is this team doing? Tell me what you're thinking about.
She wanted to build right away, and I'm like, I want to understand the whole process.
Right.
Okay, what our end result is.
So we have 2 different kinds of learning styles happening
so
here.
We're meshing it together.
Okay. Do we feel like we have enough information to work off of? Do we?
Well, of course, I would immediately have to go research the 50 different kinds of puff cars that are out there so that I could see different examples instead of just playing.
And do you have an idea in mind that you're ready to try to execute?
One and play and tinker. And
let's try it. Since I have not provided you with research time and access, I think you have to go with your partner's approach.
That whole part here, we have to go into our design.
But maybe you're brainstorming. You can maybe imagine some of the things you might see out there.
And we were tinkering, so we have where we can make it roll by blowing on it.
Through testing it, we discovered that if we don't do something, we're going to lose some of the we're going to lose our wheels.
Our wheels, yeah.
Great. So you already worked through this, at least this part of the process, testing, and then where did you have to go after testing?
So
We're back in redesigning.
right.
To go back to redesign, great.
talk
And then
about
did
what
you
we
go to brainstorming and thinking about some ideas to fix what you observed from the test?
Yes.
Excellent. So you see how you're just moving all around the process.
Yes.
What are some of the career connections? Who would you think of to talk to say kids were acting as when we're doing this?
I thought about with the Nissan Stadium being very, not the Nissan Stadium, the Nissan plant factory being close to Nashville. So maybe asking if they know anyone who works there. I think engineering has something to do with this because you're kind of designing.
Yeah, let's dive
I
even
guess a
deeper. What kinds of
mechanical engineer.
How so? What's the mechanics here? Yes, mechanical makes me think of anything that's got moving parts or machinery. So we've got moving wheels, right? Your wheels do move, right?
Yes.
Did you figure that was
And
important?
there's some type of potential and kinetic energy.
So what kind of engineer works on energy? Did anybody find it, like this team, difficult to begin? Difficult to figure out where to start? Do you think that could be a problem for youth as they're starting on this activity?
I always think you should have a model for young people to just get an idea to start thinking. And we didn't, so I was just kind of like, wish we had a model to kind of determine what we need to do. But I like our Flintstone car. We're working on it.
Okay, I know Mr. Freeman can't stop, so I mean it's still working on it. Yeah, I think we really at Techbridge we really do tend not to provide models because we want the free open tinkering, but I think it's wise for anybody who's facilitating this activity to have a backup, have some pictures. You talked about wanting to see, going online and doing research. You're a true librarian. You were like, I wanted to see the examples. So the research could come at the beginning to spark some ideas by looking at there are tons of YouTube videos of kids and adults having Puffmobile races. There's a fantastic video about these people. They call themselves like desert pirates, and they've built like a pirate ship that is powered by sails across the desert. It's amazing. Your kids will be totally blown away. That might also be a great thing to bring at the end. Blown away. Oh. We were talking about career connections, so we were acting as mechanical engineers,
And supply
material science engineers, as you think about.
science engineers, which I learned is a thing.
We talked about environmental engineers would certainly be consulted on a project, probably any kind of mechanical car-based project, but certainly one that was wind-powered.
Yeah.
Environmental engineer and energy specialist.
One thing I thought, where if I did this in a classroom, I would emphasize maybe like display all of them so the kids could take a look at the variety and really try to emphasize that there is no right answer. There isn't one right answer except in Mr. Freeman's math class. But you know that scientists can come together to problem solve and have many different solutions that all kind of come up with the same conclusion. And I think that's important. A lot of times I think our students just think that science is ask a question, get an answer, and they don't realize that there's so much more variety and diversity in how science handles topics or problems.
And I think just to build on that, the kids really need to be invited that not only is there no one right answer, but we're still making discoveries. There's research that say kids think that everything in science has been discovered and it's in my science book. And in fact, we as adults need to say, we need you because you're going to make the next discoveries. We don't even know what we don't know yet, and we need you. So I think we're zooming through it. We have just a few more minutes left, but I think we were practicing these strategies to engage. I was really set up this activity for student-driven inquiry, right? You were given the materials, I didn't give you any preconceived ideas about what to follow, and you and your partner had to figure out a way to work. I was trying to give growth mindset-based specific feedback. It was a little difficult in this kind of situation, but what that means is really noticing what the kid is doing, and instead of praising the person or the final product, noticing the behavior. Because noticing that and reinforcing and praising that gives them something to fall back on the next time they're in a situation that feels like this. Love Carol Dweck's growth mindset philosophy. I was trying to use some open-ended questions. I didn't come around to anybody and give an answer. I wanted to hear what you and your partner were talking about. I also didn't touch anybody's project, because what happens the minute we as an adult put our hands on someone's project? There tend to be two reactions, either the, great, you do it and fix it for me, or the, hey, she just messed up my project. I wasn't even doing that. Fine. I don't need to do it. So hands-off facilitation as much as possible. Now, when you see kids struggling, try your best to ask questions and questions and questions to get them back on track, or say, is it all right with you if I try something here? What do you think? Is that going to go towards the result you wanted? And then we were doing the reflection and making connections to careers. So when you have a role model training, you're going to want to look at your hands-on activity and spend time going over each of those aspects with them. So thanks, everybody. We're going to zoom through the rest of our notes here. We could go on for another hour about the kinds of facilitation techniques that we were doing, and maybe those are elements you want to include in your role model training. My appreciation to you is just to, thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for spreading the word about our website. We want to direct more people to this free resource at techbridgegirls.org/role models matter. So with that, thank you so much for coming tonight. And this is a picture of Techbridge Girls thanking you for being a caring adult who wants to bring more kids into STEM. Thanks.